Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Sweet Home Season 1, Episode 8. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, we're immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode. It is the hulking monster that's going after our crew. Everyone, Samwook and Yori are still inside the car and they're knocked out. Luckily, Hyun ends up getting up and he's trying to fight this thing, but to no avail. But he's also luckily backed up by, I thought his name was Mr. On, because I think there's a Miss On, but obviously there's a lot of like Korean names that overlap on the surname front, like Kim and stuff. So I don't know if maybe she is. There's a character named Miss On, but there might be also Mr. On as well. But either way, the old man that Yuri looks after, I think his name is Mr. On, but I could be mistaken. He comes out, I think Molotov cocktails in hand, throwing them, and he ends up backing up Hyun, but the problem is his nose starts bleeding. Now, nothing happens later on, because either, hey, I'm already dying, my body's in the situation and condition that it's in, so it doesn't really matter in the long run, or his nosebleed had nothing to do with the symptoms of the infection and monsterization. It's just more we know like his body's giving out, so he doesn't have that long to live, so it could just be it could be a literal just manifestation of his body's natural progression of like, yeah, I'm dying, so that, because nothing else comes about it. Considering what happens to Seon Young later on, you'd assume like, okay, why wouldn't he be locked up as well? So we'll get to that when we get to it. But he was going to sacrifice himself for Hugh, and he was like, yo, live. And before the monster could hit him, he gets hit by a truck. I was like, oh, is it like Sang-wook or Yuri woke up? It's like, no, it didn't even cross my mind to think it was Yi Kyung. She shows up in time, coming in clutch. I also love when that thing ended up trying to tip the truck over. Luckily for her, that it was caught on a telephone pole, because if it wasn't, that would have immediately flipped over, but it gave her an opportunity to slip underneath it. The car that Samwook and Yuri was in ends up being on fire. He drags her out, gets her near to one of those like cylinder things, hides out from the explosion. Yikyong gets back in the truck and rams into this thing, knocks it off to this, I guess a part of this part of the place was still under construction, but it falls and impales itself. Then I thought her plan was, hey, I'm going to drive this and I'm going to jump out just at the last second and let this crash down on top of it, but she knocks something on fire on top of it, which, hey, you're going for the double tap. I appreciate it. So, yeah, the thing might be hard to kill. I mean, it is a hulking thing. Like, it's not going to be the easiest thing to kill, but it's impaled right now. You dropped a flaming thing on top of it, so it's getting burned at the same time it's being held down. So I don't know if it's dead, but I mean, it's probably at least approaching death. That's at least a good assumption. So, luckily, that situation worked out. And it also allows you to keep the vehicle. I love later on when she's talking to Mr. On. He's like, oh, did you trade my baby in for that piece of junk? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, right. I was like, I completely forgot. She took your bike. Right. But he was like, hey, did she ride fast? And he's like, yeah, she did. And it's like, that's all she could ask for. So he's not too hurt by it. It's at least someone got to ride her. He wouldn't have had that opportunity. I'm sure before he died, he probably wanted. I don't know if he hadn't had an opportunity to ride since his condition and since his organs were shutting down. He probably, maybe he was looking for one more ride. He didn't get that opportunity, but it's like, hey, at least she got driven, and at least she didn't just sit back and rust and waste away. It's like, no, she got one good ride out of her, so that's the silver lining to it. I do appreciate Yikion ended up giving Mr. On this inhaler, which he gave Yuri later. So it makes me wonder about that conversation about how much do we have left. I thought they were specifically talking about his medication, but I think, because I couldn't tell at the time, I was like, either that's in reference to her inhaler or that's in reference to his medication. I'm assuming it's in reference to her inhaler, considering he gives her one this episode. Since he gives it to her and he's like, how'd you get it? He's like, don't worry about it. I wonder, has she not had her inhaler since she used it in that episode a few episodes back? Because last episode, I think it was last episode, Yuri was like, yeah, you Are you okay? Shouldn't you be taking care of yourself more so than anyone else? So I think she probably hadn't really been taking it because she probably doesn't have any left. Because we only saw her use it the one episode. So that makes me feel like there probably wasn't any left. I really like that the shoe was on the other foot this time, that it was actually Sam Wook that ended up saving her and kind of taking care of her, which I think she appreciates it. I love that Mr. On came and took the cigarette out of his mouth. He's like, "Oh, you called him some kind of idiot. You I forgot, you ignorant idiot," or something like that, because it's like, right, you're smoking around someone that has asthma. But I even love Yuri's like, yeah, that's his way of saying thank you. So I guess maybe at the time it's such a reflex, it's like, I gotta have a smoke. They just like, I actually wasn't even thinking about the fact that you have asthma and how effed up that is. But I think it also flows into the conversation you had with Yuri about, like, yeah, so many people around here are trying to survive and you kind of giving up. He's not giving up anymore, but I think it just sparks him later on when when Yeonyu is like, yo, I need a lighter. Don't you want your lighter? And he's like, nah, quit smoking. She's like, we'll see how long that lasts. A comparison between two characters it never correlated in my head until this episode was Yi Kyung and Eon Hyuk. Like, I didn't realize, like, there's some similarities where it's like, right, she left because of, well, somewhat because of his selfishness and stuff like that, of him just kind of being a douchebag. But obviously she had her own reasons to leave, trying to, track down her fiance and find out what happened to him and find out what his connection might be to all of this, not knowing that, oh, he was not 100% knowing for sure that he was the one behind the blog post and that he was. But just finding out the truth about him and everything. But what I thought was so interesting is, obviously when she left, like, Eon Hyuk was not the best guy, but he's softened up. He's done a better job in the grand scheme of things. And then you add it, but he was about kind of using people, and now Yi Kyung's kind of doing the same thing because she's asking, like, oh, what about Hyun? It's like, wait, that's the first thing you ask about the moment you get here? It's like, yeah, has his condition got worse? Tell me every detail about what happened, because Eon Hyuk's like, won't you tell me how you got back here so safely? Where did you go? Yada, yada, yada. And she goes to visit Hyun, and she cuts his hand just to see what the healing process is like, and if he, where the stage of the monsterization is. And it's like, right, when was the first time you noticed your symptoms? How long has it been? Because she's trying to track it. And it was even messed up, her using the term, like, when did you become a monster? It's like, you didn't have to say that. And he's just like, I don't know, I haven't really kept track of it. She's also like, how did you fight it? And he's like, I just want it to live. That's all I've done. And I think that's what really struck her to her core, because I guess in her mind, it's a twofold things. I mean, it's an amalgamation of so much. There's the element of, she wants to know, like, if you can make it, maybe Sangwon made it too. Maybe he actually is out there and he's okay. I mean, he might actually be the person that escaped that that soldier was referencing. But also, there's the element of, hey, she even says, like, hey, she even tells him, I told a soldier about you and the experiments they were having on the infected. It's like, oh, did they find a cure? It's like, no, what you should be asking me is, what did they do to these test subjects? And she's like, I told them about you, and she was feeling guilty about it, because it's like, I did it to survive too. I just wanted to live as well. And so it is that thing of, Hyuk was kind of using people and he sucked for that. Now she's kind of realizing, like, I was using you as a bargaining chip just so I could survive, and she feels bad about it. Because it is that situation of, I'm an adult and I'm kind of using you for my own benefit. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, Hyuk was kind of doing it for everyone, but he was still using people. So there's just this interesting parallel I didn't even think about. I don't know if that's necessarily what they're aiming for in that conversation, but that's what, like, popped in my head. I was like, oh, I understand why she did what she did, because they would have killed you, but it's like, and it is about survival, but I think it is that thing of, this probably also wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been so desperate to try and find out what happened to but it gave her a better that whole situation led to her understanding everything better, because some of that information, they would have never publicized that on the airwaves about the whole, at least if you can survive past the 15 days, which most people don't. There are only, like, once again, those special infectees situations of people like Hyun who end up potentially hitting that 15-day mark and being okay. So I just thought that was such an interesting thing, because even because Seon Young ended up telling Eon Hyuk that she's pregnant. I'm assuming when she got kicked out, that's when she told him, or I don't know when she would have told him, but he knows now. But he doesn't plan on telling the others about it. Which, speaking of Seon Young, she ends up coming to the others saying like, "Hey, I'm infected. I've been showing symptoms. I just wanted to deny it, so I should leave." But only one of the people wants her to leave. He's like, "Oh, like she can't stay here." But that guy was like, "No, she has to stay." Because I think for him, it's like she was always nice to him. It's like her husband was an asshole, but she was always nice. She's always been a kind person. I think also everyone knows what she went through with her husband. Not only like having to be the one to kill him, but also the fact is that she's always been nice and supportive and helpful, but also that she was someone that was abused. And no, I think it's the thing of none of us really helped you when you were being abused, and it's like the least we can do is help you now. We're no longer just strangers because we're all in this together. So I thought that was fascinating, and they all everyone votes to have her stay because no one wants to kick her out after everything, and even Eon Hyuk is like votes for that way too, so they're putting her in the RK, and then she goes to Hyun and she's talking to him, and there's this interesting conversation where she goes over to him and she says like, "How did you live so long?" And you know, and for her it's like, "I finally know what you were going through, and there's nothing I can do to help you." She's like, I failed you. Like, I failed you. I'm an awful adult. I couldn't do anything for you. And I'm sorry for being an awful adult." And you see Hyun crying because what Yi Kyung was saying about, right, this whole cure situation could help a lot of people. I think it got him thinking about, right, can, like, if I do what I do, like, could I end up helping a lot of people? And I think that's kind of racing through his mind, especially for Yi Kyung, because no, once again, only a few people know she's pregnant, so she has to think about not just only herself but also her child, so many other people. Hyun could be the means to understanding and containing all this. He could be the means of saving so many lives, and it's just, will you weigh all that against one kid being used as an experiment? It's the one versus the many conversation. It's the trolley situation. Now, this might be me reading too much into it, but I feel like Hyun kind of being struck to his core like that, her being like, "I'm sorry, I was an awful adult, a grown up." I think that struck a chord with him because very rarely, because he hasn't had the best experience with adults, because his own family didn't stick up for him when he stuck up for them. Like, we don't know if his family ever properly apologized to him. It was probably just so, like, he was just so despondent towards them. It's just like, "You're dead to me because of what you did." He misses them, but it's just because he has such complex feelings, because he loved them but he also hated them. And I think for him it is a situation of, I wish things were different. And I think it just comes down to, no adults have really had his back until this circumstance. Like the old man that Yuri looks after, Mr. On, and like he's been someone that's kind of had his back, and just there are older people. Some people here aren't that much older than him, but like there are some adults here and grown ups. And I think for a grown up to apologize, something I don't know if his family ever did. I get the feeling like they probably felt like, right, our apology, like despite everything, the way they kind of, at least the dad kind of treated him, that I don't think they ever apologized for, they didn't realize what they had really done and the position they put them in. And maybe they kind of felt like they were apologetic, but maybe they felt like the words would mean nothing. They still should have said it, but I think for them, maybe an apology wouldn't do anything. So what's the point? Like, I don't think it was a pride situation. I think they just felt like they didn't deserve forgiveness. So who are we to ask for it? I think that's where that comes into play. It could be, like, once again, that could be me reading too much into that human situation, but I felt like that's why that struck such a chord with him, where it's like an adult telling him, "I'm sorry for not being a better adult." I think some of the people in his life, the people that should have had his back, failed him in that regard with everything that was happening at school, with his mom and dad, you know? We also have Jisoo's surgery going off without a hitch. Obviously, at the time, they didn't know which way it was going to go. It's like, right, I guess we'll have to leave it to God now. But Jae Hyun's like, "No, we leave it to Jisoo." It's like she grabbed the thread when she was younger, so the fact is that she's going to live. Like, She's strong. It's up to her. Her will is what's going to pull her through, and ultimately she is okay. I love the reveal that Eon Hyuk. It's like, actually, I've never actually not only have I never performed a surgery, I've never actually seen one. He's going to medical school, sure, but he's never overseen a surgery, so he was flying by the seat of his pants. And I love that Jisoo was like, "Yeah, tell your sister to come here," because she's the one that said that. And he was like, "Oh, really interesting." So it's like it lucked out. I mean, she'd even said on the table, "Hey, if I die of infection, this and that, I won't blame you." It's like, yeah, it was quite the gamble. I mean, it worked out in the end, sure, but it was still quite the gamble. And he is the only one that kind of had that more, at least more advanced medical knowledge. He still had to like look at the diagrams and figure out what to do. I mean, I figured he was just trial running how he would approach this whole situation, but it's like it wasn't even just a trial run, it's a first time run in general. Like he didn't even really know. He probably knew like from the steps to do, but actually executing it properly without killing her, that was kind of where he was trying to figure stuff out. But he didn't have the medical experience to actually perform the. But like I said, it worked out in the end. I even love that exchange where it's like, "Did you pass gas?" And she was like, I don't know." And then Jae Hyun being there like, "Yeah, she did. It was small and weak, but it smelled." And she's like, "No." And he was like, "But yeah, she did." And she's just like, "Son of a bitch." Like, I love how embarrassed she was. I also love the reveal where she was talking about what she actually talks about. It wasn't actually the thread that she pulled when she was from her first birthday ceremony. The thing that she actually grabbed was her father's collar, and Jae Hyun was like, "Yeah, that's so you." But it is like it was a rice cake knife was the first thing he had picked up. Like it was still a knife, but I don't know if that's supposed to, because it's a rice cake knife. That's such a very specific thing that I'm like, is that supposed to mean that it was like wasn't like, is it supposed to be like the equivalency of like a plastic knife, or maybe like a metal butter knife here in the U.S. Like what I, because you never know what the utensil situation is like in other countries. So I only have like the U.S. centric focus on it, being U.S. born, and it's the only country I've really know to that. And so I'm curious if that's what it almost seems like. It's him relegating it to a rice cake knife makes me think it's supposed to be like a knife that isn't sharp. He was so worried about Chisu that he did slip back into his drinking, but luckily um, Samwook ended up stopping him because he had already started drinking. Like, who knows how many he had gotten through by the time Samwook showed up. Because it's like, right, why is it every time I'm coming into the store, you're here? It's like, yeah, he was talking, Jae Hyun was like, "Yeah, you're so diligent about coming here." He's like, "Yeah, because there's every time I turn around, there's like a rat always in here." It's like, yeah, why is it that he's always there? That's kind of one of his favorite hangouts. A little bit because of the drink, I'm sure. But he was asking, Jae Hyun was asking Samwook what he grabbed when he was from his first birthday ceremony. He's like, "I don't remember." He's like, "Come on, like your parents had to have told you something." But he was like, "No, because I don't remember, because any photos that might have existed, all that got burned away." For him, it's like everything I knew is gone. Yeah, it's from that fire that took everything from him, took his home, took his dad might have been the only person he had left, because that's the only person we saw, and I'm assuming that was his father. So a lot was taken from him because of that fire. So, and it kind of burned away everything. We also had the situation with Hyun and Eonyu, who it's like, "Hey, like you're shouldn't you always be with your buddy or whatever?" She's like, "My buddy is like so sick, so that's why I'm here right now." And she comes to check on him because she's like, "That look on your face is usually a byproduct of someone said something that was very hard for you to hear." But then she's also like, "That's kind of also the look you have all the time too." So she was trying to cheer him up with everything that was going on. Obviously, because of this was like, I think this was before the Seong Yeong situation, or maybe it was definitely after the his conversation with Yi Kyung, because he was staring at like his hand, I think, from when she had cut it. But I mean, the wound had healed, obviously. But I think it just got him thinking about a lot of stuff. I can't remember if it was before the Seon Yeong situation. It might have been before that, might have been after. I don't remember the sequence of events in my head right now. She was trying to teach him that thing that she had done to Suok. Hyun, where like kind of doing it like, oh fuck you, you bastard, or something like that, and but he wasn't getting it, and she's like, wow, you have no talent for this, and ended up doing the pinky promise, which I thought was so sweet, where she's like, hold out your pinky, and he does it, and she's like, right, we made a promise. He's like, for what? She's like, that'll be a secret. And then her brother's there. He's like, "Oh, congratulations, it's your first love." Which later on, she's like, "What are you talking about? You fucking." She's like, "You idiot! What do you mean, my first love?" Yeah, right. Which I'm like, "Oh, that was super adorable." She's like, "Go on, Hugh, use what I taught you." And it's like, "Oh." And she walked past her brother. She's like, "Oh, you're so annoying." It was actually really sweet. Like I said, I think their relationship's definitely in a much better place. She had actually talked about quitting ballet because he was asking like, "Oh, is your leg better?" She's like, "Why are you asking?" He's like, "It seemed like it hurt." And she's like, "Yeah, that's why I quit ballet." He was like, for she's like, "Yeah." She was saying that he should feel honored because that performance she did in episode 1, it's like, yeah, that was you were my last audience, so you should be honored. She really didn't get into it too much, but she was kind of implying like, I guess like her leg has always been injured. It wasn't just, well, because I know she kind of like, I guess, re-injured it even more when she was going down the stairs in episode 2 and she fell. But I think it was already an underlining issue, and that's why she quit. I mean, maybe there's other issues as well, because he feels like there's a lot more to it why she cut up her ballet dress. I mean, it's also the end of the world, so it's like, who else would I dance for, essentially? But he was like, no, you were really good. It was a really good performance, and you're a really good dancer. Like, why would you get up? It's like, who would I dance for with all of this going on? There was also a soldier that shows up, and we don't know what his circumstances are. It's still super unclear what the hell that's all about. But he's a runaway soldier. He found his way here. I guess he saw their SOS, and he thought, oh, but there's people inside, or maybe there's supplies, because he strolled in gun ready. But it was like during Yi Kyung like taking a shower, and she like disarmed him, and he immediately ate some food and just started freaking out. I'm like, I don't know whether he experienced something related to these monsters that caused some trauma, and maybe he just ran away from his duty. So either the situation is, I mean, I don't know what that's like in Korea. Like I mean, I don't know what desertion, like the penalty for desertion is. I mean, in Korea, but in general, even here in the U.S., like I don't know if that's an immediate like death sentence or not. I think it will lead to a dishonorable discharge, but I don't. I think maybe it would lead to some. You definitely would get court-martialed, and you probably get jail time for it. But I don't think it'd be like immediate death thing. That's why I'm like, I don't know how it is in Korea when it comes to military. I mean, any military service. I mean, obviously it's mandatory in Korea, but more specifically, like did like ditching the way he has, like maybe that's also why he's scared, because he's like, yeah, if they find me after everything that's going down, they'll kill me for like running, or maybe he stumbled across something he shouldn't know, because Yi Kyung was like, why are you here, like what? And then the radio starts going off, and he's talking about, oh, the people on the other side are like, yeah, the I can hear their voice, and I can hear his voice, like, oh, that guy's radio is still on. They ultimately smashed the radio because I guess it's like, right, you're going to try and track him here. Maybe that's what they're concerned about, or because he wasn't trying to talk on the radio. It seemed like he was trying to run away from the whole thing. I'm like, I don't quite get that sequence, what that's all about. Because Yi Kyung's had her second guessing about working with the military, I think, because she's saying, well, the device, because there's no satellites, they can't quite track her, but at least if she presses that button, that means, I guess it will give them, and I guess like if that's the more rudimentary way of like, we'll track you this way because we don't have the satellites access to them to be able to properly track you on our own. So we're going to need you to lead us to where you need to go, or when the time has come that you've checked on Hugh and found out he really is the special case that you believe him to be, and that we can come roll in. So but she immediately tells them to tear down the SOS signal, because if the military strolls by, the last thing we want them to do is see that sign and believe people are here. They'll most likely go by if they think no one's here. If they think the survivors are here, they might put two and two together about Yi Kyung, or I mean, I don't know how. It doesn't seem like she gave them any details about where they were. I mean, she played a lot of that close to her vest because she knows if she didn't, then it'd be an issue. Because for one, she's got to prove herself to them, because they're like, right, how do we know you're not lying just to buy time? And also, you're keeping a lot of information yourself because the more you tell us, the more likely you're to die. So we'll let you go, and you will she's like, I'll give, because it's like, even Yi Keon was like, what if I don't? It's like, you will, just because you care about other people, surviving. Also, she's going to get answers about what happened to Sungwon and what became of him. It's like a lot of, and the answer she's been looking for. So she's extra motivated by this. So we also had Hyun cutting his hair, matching obviously what he has at the beginning. So, like I said, I wasn't quite sure if that was him in the beginning, but as the season was going on, I'm like, it definitely had to just be him. Once again, we still don't even know what the circumstances are of what led to that. Is everyone else dead? Are they hiding out? Is he the only one to come out? We don't know. But we finally run into the security officer, which I'm like, what has he been up to this entire time? The last time we saw him in the show, didn't see him, but it kind of implied it was him, is when that creature in the basement grabbed Yi Keong, which I want to say that was like episode 3, that thing grabbed her. So we haven't, it's this being, yeah, so we haven't seen him in quite a few episodes at all. So I'm like, interesting. I was wondering why he was still kind of like the unknown factor, especially considering it seems like most of the buildings cleared at this point. Like, once again, anyone that wasn't inside the building most likely died outside, and anyone that was in the building is dead. Like, these are only people, because it seems like Yuri and Mr. On were like the last new people we were going to meet amongst the cast. So we haven't met anyone new beyond them. So everyone that's here on the first floor is all the survivors. So I doubt by this point anyone else would still be kicking it in a room at this point. But yeah, the security officer making his way down. So the strings weren't just a security system for himself, because I had brought that up in a previous episode when he was climbing upstairs, when Hyuk had him going up the stairs. He was setting up. I thought that was like, okay, just a security system for himself, but it's like, no, it's supposed to connect all the way downstairs to be an early security system, even for the first floor. So Home-do was coming down. I was like, oh, please don't let Miss Han, that's the mom who lost her daughter, I was like, please don't let her get got. And came pretty close, but one-armed boy Jae-hyun shows up and does his thing. I was like, God, I was like hoping Hyun would be able to get there in time. He even dropped down the flight of stairs just to make it faster, and it's like, did that work in the long run? I don't know, because in the end he ended up breaking one of his legs, and he couldn't get through in time, and Hyun was struggling to get to the door while Jae-hyun was fighting off this creature, and the guy's got the grass cutter or weed whacker, and ends up cutting through his sword and cutting off his arm, his sword arm. I was like, damn it. Especially when, like, him and Jisoo they had that beautiful conversation where she was like, thank you for saving my life, and he was like, no, that was in God's will. But she was like, dude, I'm just trying to thank you. And he's like, thank you too. She's like, will you teach me how to use the sword? He's like, I'll teach you when you get better. I was like, damn, of course they were setting up the death flag there to be like, yeah, this ain't going to work out, homie. So sadly, lost an arm. I was like, God, there's no patching that up really quickly, but he's bleeding out, heading towards the everyone else. Guy goes to his severed arm, picks up because his sword got cut in half too, and is stabbing the shit out of the security officer. Ends up dragging him to the elevator, and just like bleeding profusely, still stabbing the guy up, and ends up stabbing the tank on his back, and is telling them to throw the Molotov to like catch him on fire, or like put him down. It meant sacrifice himself, but no one could do it. The dude with the glasses was like hesitant to do it, so it came down to Eon Hyuk. He ends up being the one that has to toss it, and which is so heartbreaking, dude. That because for him it's like this is the first time he's felt responsible for a death. Like indirectly, he felt responsible for Suong's death as well as Miss Han's daughter, but this is a situation where he is more directly responsible for this death because he killed him in the process. It's like, doing what he had to do, sure, but it still doesn't make it any easier, which is so sad that this situation played out like this, especially considering like he's one of the people we've been with, like him being the longest. We were introduced to him in episode 1 as well, so he's one of the people we learned early on, in him and Jisoo's relationship. It's sad. just as she's getting better, he ends up dying. It's heartbreaking, and just the episode ends on him being on that elevator being on fire. Just like, damn it, dude. Cannot deny he didn't go out like a badass. Like, once again, bleeding profusely, lost an arm. His other arm hadn't even fully recovered, and he was still doing his thing, sacrificing himself like that. It's just sad that it came down. And once again, I mean, I said there was like 3 episodes, so there's plenty for stuff to go down. We have 2 more after this, left in this season. So how this all plays out, where this all goes, I have no idea. I'm so curious to see how this all plays out and where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.